Hey, it's Joey for Digital DJ Tips, and welcome to video 3 of how I DJ with stems. In the first video, I introduced you to my concept of the stem loop, which is basically a short production that you put together in Ableton Live using loops and samples. In video 2, we created your stem loop map, which is the blueprint that you'll be using to make all your stem loops. In this third video, we're going to go ahead and create your first stem loop production. We're going to do 3 things. First, we're going to download the stem loop pack from the Digital DJ Tips website, which contains all the loops and samples that you need in order to create your stem loop production. Next, we're going to download the Stem Creator tool, which is a free app that turns those individual audio tracks into a stem file that you can import into Traktor Pro 2. And lastly, we're going to flesh out your empty stem loop map to create your first stem loop production. Let's get to it.
Okay, so first off, you're going to want to download the stem loop pack from the Digital DJ Tips website. I've got the link over here, and I'll also include it in the description box below. So as soon as that's finished downloading, just move it from your downloads folder over onto the desktop. Just drag it like that, whether you're on a Mac or PC. And then just unzip it. There you go. You're going to have this folder over here called Stem Loop Pack. So if you double click on that, you're going to find all loops over here. So as soon as that's done, we can begin to drop these tracks into your Ableton Live Stem Loop Map project. Okay, now we're going to download the Stem Creator, which is an app that lets you make stems. So point your browser over to this address, stems-music.com/stem-creator-tool, and then left click on download for Mac if you're on a Mac, or download for Windows if you are on a PC. I'm on a Mac, so I'm going to download this one. And soon as it finishes downloading, just double click on the installer and follow the prompts to install the Stem Creator on your computer. Okay, so let's fire up Ableton Live and open that stem loop map project that we made in the last video. Once you've got it open, let's add the stem loop pack, which we unzipped to your desktop here in the Ableton Live interface. So just left click on add folder over here in the browser, and left click on DDJT stem loop pack and hit open. Right, now you'll find it here on the lower left of the browser. If you need more space, just left click on this bar over here, drag it. There you go. So that's our folder. Left click on it. And again, if you want more space, just move that. And you'll find all the samples that we need to create our stem loop project. So let's take a listen to some of them. So that's the bass loop. And this is the bass loop for the break. So there's a little bit of silence here at the beginning, but you're going to slowly hear the bass start to come in. There you go. Got a crash cymbal sample over here. Drum loop. And a drum break. So again, you won't hear any drums at the beginning. It's slowly going to come in. We're going to drop this into the break chunk later on in this video. Let's just wait for that sound to kick in. There you go. It's just a filtered drum beat, basically. You also got your effects for the break chunk, which I've already consolidated for you, just so it's a little bit easier and quicker to drop in later on. Drop. You got your lead loop over here. If you got the lead loop during the break, again, you're just going to drop this in. Percussion sounds, extra synthesizers.
House system. This is
Got some vocals here, another vocal sample, and a vocal loop, which you'll be dropping in their break chunks. So you're going to hear sounds here to start, and the vocals will slowly come in later on. So let's just stop that. Okay, now let's build our stem loop. First off, make sure that your BPM over here in the BPM window is set to 120, which is the same tempo as our loops. You'll find that most sample packs will have their BPM and even their musical keys written, which makes it even easier for you to find loops and samples that sound good together. So right now, our tempo is set to 120, so we don't have to change that. If yours is different, click on it right now and set it to 120. With that done, let's tidy up our tracks. First, we won't be needing any MIDI in this project, so just left click on the MIDI track and hit delete. Same here. There we go. We'll add more audio tracks as needed throughout this video. So let's add in our first loop. Let's start with the drums. Just follow along as I do this. By the way, sometimes I'll fast forward a portion just so it's not so boring if you're watching it. But in the end, I'll show you the completed stem loop map so you can see how and where I place the loops and samples. Let's go. So let's start with the drums over here. All right, so left click and let's drag it on over to the first track over here in measure number 1, which is our intro. There we go. And you can play that back if you hit the play button. Okay, cool. So that is the intro chunk sorted as far as the drums go. So let's rename this track just to make it easier to see later on. Right click and choose rename. Type in drums. There we go. And we may as well save our project while we still can. So I'm going to go to File, choose Save Live Set As. Then I'm going to change the name of this one to House System, which is the name of this track. So I suggest you do the same. Save. And there you go. Right, so we've got our intro chunk over here. And we just want the drum beat going for the intro. And let's copy this on over to the verse chunk. So one way to copy would be to right click our loop, choose copy, or you can also press Command C or Control C if you're in a PC. And then just left click at the start of the verse chunk in measure number 9. Left click with your mouse, right click, and then paste. Or you can also press Command V or Control V. There you go, you just copied the loop in. Right, cool. Now let's copy this on over to the verse 2 subchunk. So I'm just gonna press the keyboard shortcut, left click on the start of the verse 2 subchunk on measure 17, and I'm gonna paste it. There you go. And then I'm going to add a variation over here in the verse 2 subchunk. And what I want to do here is I want to add some percussions. So I'm going to check out the perc loop over here. Right, and I'm going to drag that on over to the verse 2 subchunk. Cool, so you've got a hi-hat rhythm going on in the background. Now let's rename this. Call it Fritz. All right, awesome. Now we need to add another audio track in here. So to do that, just right click and choose Insert Audio Track over here on the right side of the arrangement view window. There you go. Now I think we should add in some bass. Yeah, nice bass line over here. So left click and drag this on over to the first chunk. Yeah, good. Oh, and if you see your master over here going to the red, that means you're potentially clipping, or you are clipping already. So the way to remedy that would be to lower the volume a little bit. So you can lower the volume of the master channel by left clicking on this box over here. So let's play that back. As you can see, it's turning red. Let's bring it down a little bit. A little bit more. Maybe around -5 is enough. Yeah, that's fine. Let's just keep it at that level first, just so we're not clipping. Cool. Now let's copy this bass loop on over to the verse 2 subchunk. So let's rename this bass. Right, so you've got these going on. Let's add another audio track. And this time, let's add in our lead. Oops, it's this one over here. Right, I think I want to try adding that in here. Let's see how this sounds. on over to the verse 2 sub chunk. There you go. And let's rename this. Lead. Alright, cool. And then let's add another audio track over here. And let's add in this vocal, this plucking sound, I mean. Just give it a little bit of flavor. Let's add that in over to the verse 2 sub chunk. Let's rename this. Pluck. And let's hear how our stem loop sounds so far. Let's start from the intro. Sounds fine, and then verse kicks in. That's still good. Now let's hear how the verse 2 sub chunk sounds. Okay, cool. This sounds nice. Okay, great. So now let's work on the break chunk. Let's give ourselves a little bit more space here. I'm just going to left click on this arrow in the lower right, which will fold down the device view window. Just give us a little bit more space. And then let's add some audio tracks over here. Let's add another one. Okay, so first off, let's add the drum break loop. Now again, like I said, I consolidated the loops over here just so it's easier to drop in. So all you got to do now is left click on it and just drop it at the beginning of the break chunk and you're done. As you can see, the entire loop spans the entire break and break 2 sub chunk portions. So that's fine. So let's fill this out. I've got other break portions over here, one for the bass. So left click and drop it in the bass track. Here you go. And another break portion over here. Let's do the lead first. There you go. And then, oh, we've got a vocal break over here. So let's add that in. Start the break chunk. And let's call this the vocal track. And we've got the lead. Oh, we already dropped that in. Let's drop in the break over here. Effects break. So put that in there. And we'll call this effects. And let's listen to how that sounds like.
House system. This is house system. Just listen. House system. This is house system. Just listen.
Okay, cool. We're going to fix that up a little bit later on. Let's just add another track in here. That's your audio track. And let's try putting in this crash cymbal. I think you could add that over here at the start of the break chunk. There we go. Just to give it a little bit more emphasis. And listen to that a little bit.
House system.
Let's copy our drums.
House system.
Put in the drum chunk, as well as the drop chorus 2 sub chunk.
House system. Just listen.
Alright, let's add our vocals over here.
Out.
Vocal 1 loop, drop it in the vocal track.
House system. This is a house system. Just listen.
Okay, and then you've got another loop here called FX drop. So let's put that in here. in the effects track at the drop chorus chunk.
House system. This is a house system. Just listen. House system.
Okay, cool. Now,
This is
add the bass in.
house
Copy that
system.
loop over here.
House system. This is a house system.
Add in our crash too.
Just
Over
listen.
here at the start of the drop chorus chunk.
House system. This is a house system. Just listen. House system. This is a house system. Just
Okay,
listen.
that sounds fine. Now for the drop chorus 2 sub chunk, let's add a bit of variation over here. Let's copy this bass loop and then let's put in our lead. It would sound good over here. Yeah, and then I've got another vocal over here, vocal 2, which is like a pared down version of our vocal loop. So left click and drag that on over to the drop chorus 2 sub chunk.
House system.
Alright, and then let's add in our pluck loop.
House system.
Alright, now for the outro, let's take a look at what our intro consists of. It's just the drums loop over here. So let's do the same. And let's add a bit of variation. Maybe let's drop in our lead. Okay, cool. Now let's copy this crash cymbal to the start of the outro chunk, just to give it a bit more emphasis. Alright, and I think the start of the verse chunk should have a cymbal as well. Let's paste one at the start of the verse chunk in measure number 9. There you go. Now let's listen to the verse 2 sub chunk going to the break. Okay, I think this needs a bit of a riser, basically something that will tell the listener that we're moving on to the next chunk of the song. And what I like to do, something that's super quick to do as well, is to copy a crash cymbal. It's just this one. Let's just make it fit this measure. So I'll shorten it like that, and then I'll copy it and then place it right before the end of the chunk, right before the start of the break chunk over here. So I'm going to paste this, and then I'm going to highlight it, and let's bring up this window over here. And I'm going to click on the clip view selector, and I'm going to choose reverse. So what that's going to do is it's going to reverse the crash cymbal, so it's going to sound like a instead of a ch. That's a pretty bad impression, but here's how it sounds like. There you go. So that's just a quick way to add a bit of emphasis during the end of a chunk leading on to the next one. And let's listen to the drums over here. Sounds okay. Alright, let's listen to the break 2 sub chunk leading to the drop.
House system. Just listen. House system. This is a house system. Just listen. House system. This is a house system. Just listen. House system.
Okay, cool. So let's listen to the entire stem loop production. Let's begin here at measure 1, and let's just hit play and see how the entire thing sounds like. it better. Zoom it in. There you go. Lower the volume a little bit. There, that should be fine.
House system. This is house system. Just listen. 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 House system. House system.
Okay, cool. I think we should add this percussion loop over here. Maybe to the start of the drop chorus to sub chunk. And maybe even to the outro.
House system. House system.
Alright, cool. So that's it. This is your entire stem loop production. So you've got your drums here, percussions, bass, and your synths, as well as the vocals and some effects. Let's rename this to Crash before we end. And hit save, Command S, Control S. Okay, cool. Now we're done fleshing out our stem loop production. It's time to export these audio tracks for the stem creator, which will give us our stem file. But remember that you can only have a maximum of 4 stem tracks. At the moment, we've got 8 audio tracks. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So the solution is to group tracks that perform the same function in the mix. For example, we can group the drums and percs together to create a drum stem because they form the rhythm of our song. So let's try that right now. Highlight both of the tracks as I have done, and then right click and choose group tracks. You'll see them fall under a new folder, and left click on it. Let's rename it. Let's call this the drum stem. That, and you can left click on the arrow, which will fold up these tracks, give us a little bit more space. Next, we have the bass track. I think this can stand alone on its own. It performs an important part of the track, so you can leave that as is. It can have its own stem. Let's move on over to the lead and pluck. Let's listen to them. Hit S to solo. Yeah, okay. Let's group the two of these into a synth stem. So group tracks. Let's rename this synth stem. There you go. Fold that up. And then lastly, let's just collate the vocal and effects and crash tracks together, since they sort of add a little bit of spice and flavor to our track anyway. So right click and group the tracks, choose rename, and call this vocal effects stem. There you go. Fold it up. Now we've got 4 tracks over here. One drum stem, one for the bass, which will become our bass stem, synth stem, and the vocal effects stem. So before we start to export these tracks individually, let's export them as a stereo file first, which will serve as our master track. The stem creator needs 5 different kinds of tracks, 4 stem tracks and 1 master track. So let's export that. I'm going to go to File, hit Export Audio. Going to make sure that these settings are here. File type wave, 44, 100, and 16. Going to hit Export. I'm going to go to my desktop. Going to make a new folder over here. I'll call it JT House System Stem Loop Create. And I'll call it House System Stem Loop. And then hit Save. So that's going to give us the entire track. Okay, now that we've exported our master file, it's time to export the individual stems. Let's start with the drum stems. So hit the S button over here, which will solo the track. Now you're just going to hear all the audio tracks that are under the drum stem group. That includes the drums and the percussion. If you want to check again, there you go. Cool. So just hit File, go to Export Audio Video, and just export it. Let's call this House System Drums. There you go. You can export that. Now hit the S button to unsolo it, and then let's solo the bass track. Listen to it. Okay. Now let's export that. Call this bass. Cool. Unsolo it. Solo the synth stem track. Synth stem group, I mean. Let's export that. Synth. Save. There we go. Unsolo that, and let's solo the last group, which are the vocals and effects. So File, Export, hit Export, change this to Vocals Effects. There we go. Cool. Unsolo that. And before we close this, don't forget to save it. So hit Save. It's done. And I'm gonna browse on over to the folder where I exported these stems. Desktop, System Loop, and you're gonna find 5 files over here: bass, drums, the master file, synth stems, and the vocal effects. So you can preview them if you want, and you should only hear the sounds that are in that group.
House system. Just listen.
There you go. This is the master file. Cool. That's the drums. Everything sounds okay. Bass is there. Okay, cool. So these are all of the stems and master file that we need. Now let's launch the stem creator tool and let's make our first stem file. So I'm gonna open it up right now. Applications. Double click on stem creator. Wait for it to load. Dum 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 dum. Okay, so we got our stem creator over here. Just that on over there. And let's go back to the folder where we had our stems. So as you can see, I've got 5 fields over here: drums, bass, synths, vocals, and master file. So we're gonna drag all of our tracks over here. So let's start with drums. Let's left click on House System Drums. Put that there. And then bass. And then synths. And then vocals. And finally, the master file. There you go. Now, let's play this back. As you can see over here on the left side, the tab is set to the stem mix. That means we're listening to the individual stem tracks simultaneously. If if you switch it on over to master file, we're basically listening to this master file over here. So the idea is the volume of your stem mix should be the same as the master file. At the moment, it sounds identical, so no need to change any of these settings. Okay, cool. So let's pause this, and then let's fill in these fields. So track name is house system. Artist name, you can write your name here. I'll write mine, Joey Santos. And that's that. So I'm gonna hit export over here. I'm gonna go to, oh, there you go. Already in the folder. So house system stem loop dot stem. Let's just put your name here to start. Write mine. There you go. Hit save. Now it's going to export the tracks into a single stem file. So let's just wait for that. Hooray! The export is successful and it is finished. So click OK. And if you go on over to the folder containing the stem tracks, you're going to find that you've got your stem loop over here. This is going to be the file name, so your name's going to be there, and then house system stem loop.stem.mp4. And that's it. We're done. In the next video, we're going to import this in Traktor Pro 2. I'm going to show you how to format it, how to add the cue loop points, and finally, how to perform with it in a live DJ setting. So I'll see you then. Give yourself a pat on the back because you have your first stem loop production.
So that's it for video 3 of how I DJ with stems. I've got the full training article over at the Digital DJ Tips website. The link is in the description box below. In the next and final video, I'm going to show you how to take that stem file into Traktor Pro 2, how to format it, and give you some ideas on how you can perform with it while you DJ. Please hit the thumbs up icon if you like this video and hit the subscribe button if you are not a subscriber yet. We're more than halfway through in the series, so if you've made it this far, congratulations. See you in the next video. We're going to have a ton of fun. My name is Joey. I'll see you then.